Apparently, Cherise was out of town again. But before I returned to my room, I wrote a quick memo for the clerk to give her, requesting a vampire be sent to Alucia for her fix. I said I'd do it. I settled down on my bed and pulled the note out of its pristine envelope, scanning over it. Valkii, I received a call from Miss Alucia earlier. Excellent work. Enclosed as a token of my gratitude, expressed in dead presidents. Don't spend it all in one place. I turned the envelope upside down and out fell a bundle of bills. A shockingly large amount of money, too. Your next task will be ready soon. Keep up the admirable performance and one day you might end up as my right-hand woman. As a final word of warning, there has been another murder. The mutilation was identical to the body you found in the sewers, except instead of an Ascari agent, the victim was a Golgotha. Be on your toes, Valkii. We do not know where they will strike next. I look forward to our next meeting, Cherise. Well, at least I hadn't immediately been thrown another errand, which meant I had some time to do as I pleased. Maybe Randall would pay me a visit tomorrow, or else I could explore that invitation I'd gotten from Zhang. The more I thought about it, the more curiosity and caution pulled me in opposite directions. Meeting with the Golgotha leader wasn't a bad idea in theory. He might have useful information. I just wasn't sure what to expect. Someone who lived in a graveyard had to have unique tastes, to say the least. With those last uncertain thoughts circling in my mind, I let sleep take me for another night. Ring ring. My deathly nap was cut short by the phone nearby. I lurched upright and reached out for the receiver, holding it to my ear. Hey, Valkii, is that you? Randall, this is a surprise. Sure is, for the both of us. I didn't think they'd let me through to your room. But they're probably wiretapping this call right now, so I'm not going to talk about all the filthy things we did the other night, even though Cherise would probably like to hear that. Randall let out a sudden roar of laughter that nearly deafened me and probably scared the pants off any silent eavesdroppers. Anyway, rise and shine, kid. Sorry if I woke you up. How do you feel about coming out to help me with something tonight? Good chance for you to get out of that prison hotel. Of course, just say the word and I'll be there. That's what I like to hear. I knew I could count on you, kid. I could almost envision the proud grin spreading over his face. Truth is, some vampire hunters have been sniffing around not far from the beach. They're different guys from that photo crew earlier, probably part of the group that's been harassing us for the past few weeks. His tone grew more serious and slightly longer, hesitant pauses separated his words. Normally they're not a problem, but they're getting smarter, hunting us down individually instead of as a group, getting better rifles and equipment. We've had some injuries and some losses. Randall briefly went silent. When he spoke again, his voice had regained its firm confidence. So tonight, we need to scare him off as good as we can, make sure they won't pose a problem for us anymore. Good opportunity for you to see with your own eyes what we're up against, and Queen Bitch shouldn't mind, since hunters are out to get all of us. Alright, I'm ready. Where should I meet you? Damn, with that kind of attitude, you deserve a promotion. I should write you a recommendation letter for Cherise. Randall let out a gravelly chuckle that rasped into my ear. Alright, meet me on the beach as soon as you can. Oh, and Valkii, maybe don't wear your nice shoes. You never know how things will end up. I don't think I have nice shoes. After we said our goodbyes, I quickly threw on my clothes and hurried outside, wondering just what to expect. I was finally going to see these hunters Heath had mentioned a while back. I wondered if they were anything like the vampire hunters I'd seen in movies. A short taxi ride later, I arrived at the Santa Monica beach. As I plodded through the sand to Randall's beach house, I noticed a small group gathered outside it. There was no mistaking that eye-catching figure and the adoring crowd around him. There you are, newbie. Glad you decided to turn up. When I wandered up to Randall's side, he reached out to squeeze my shoulder, letting his large palm rest there for a few moments. Hey, Valkii. Aw man, Randall, you didn't tell us we could bring a date. The other Mavar playfully called out, apparently in high spirits. They all looked lightly armed, a few with pistols, some with knives. Maybe they preferred hand-to-hand combat. Date? Who said anything about dates? Valkii is one of us, you guys know that. She could use a little practice defending territory with a group. A chorus of murmurs and growls in agreement rang out in response to Randall's comment. I noticed a few skeptical glances thrown my way afterward, but nobody spoke up. Alright, listen up. Our scouts earlier said that they saw the hunters back in the city, not too far from the pier. We should be fine as long as nobody gets caught out, but those fuckers seem to know exactly when we're going to show up, and a bullet to the heart isn't something you can just laugh off. When Randall addressed us with a more serious, intense gaze, the group quickly grew quiet. I could see a number of them shifting from foot to foot, fingers clenching into fists. We're going to split up and try to flank them. You guys will go on ahead and let the hunters trail you through the streets, while me and Valkii follow from behind. His voice was low, but so confident and determined that no one even batted an eye when he mentioned me as his partner of choice. If everything goes according to plan, we'll trap him in an alley and deal with them there, and no innocent witnesses will get in the way. We've got to put an end to this shit tonight, so for all your clanmates' sakes, don't do anything stupid. Everyone got it? Yeah, let's go. Get him! Come on, let's get him! Hell yeah, what are we waiting for? As the group quickly worked back into an eager, loud fervor, rustling with excitement to turn the hunters into prey. Randall glanced down at me, his brow knitting slightly. You ready for this, newbie? I called you down because I knew you could handle it. I like to believe people are a lot stronger than they think they are. Randall, I was born ready. Let's go. Man, I sure love that spirit of yours. Makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Don't even know why I bother worrying about you. Oh, what a sweetie. I feel like I'm just going to say that about him all the time. Alright, everyone. Let's show these cocksuckers that you don't fuck with Mavar. And with a last rallying cry, we left the beach for the Santa Monica streets. Randall and I stayed behind, letting the rest of the group go ahead. We could track their scents afterwards. After a few minutes had passed, we began to cautiously follow them. At Randall's request, I kept a careful watch for anyone on the street who looked suspicious. Of course, considering all the usual types out at 1 AM in Santa Monica, it wasn't a particularly easy task. When we rounded a corner, Randall suddenly tensed beside me, his eyes narrowing into slits. Curious, I followed his gaze to the other side of the street, where a quiet, oddly dressed group was briskly walking along. If I strained my ears, I thought I could hear the sound of metal rattling, the clicking of guns or knives. There they are. Keep walking, don't lose sight of them. He muttered softly, his eyes full of sharp focus, like a wild animal wary of an attack. They smell angry. Yeah, they do. Probably think they're on some kind of holy righteous quest. Who the hell knows? Randall's upper lip curled faintly in scorn, or maybe amusement, I couldn't really tell. We trailed the hunters along the road, keeping enough of a distance to not attract their attention. Luckily, the streets were still flecked with people wandering around, so we weren't entirely alone. If everything was going according to plan, Randall's clanmates were leading us to a good ambush spot. Just then, one of the hunters glanced over his shoulder, straight at Randall and me. Without warning, Randall suddenly reached out to grab my hand. His bandaged palm pressed against mine, and he wrapped his large calloused fingers around my own. Squeeze his hand. Randall shot me a surprised look when I gently squeezed our hands together. Well, this was his idea. He couldn't blame me for making the most of it. For a tense few moments, the hunter's eyes seemed to stare right through us. He had to have guessed. We definitely looked suspicious, especially since Randall didn't exactly blend into his surroundings. But finally, after what felt like forever, the hunter's gaze shifted to someone else on the street. The group kept walking instead of turning around to blow our brains out, which was probably a good sign. Randall let out a long, relieved exhale by my side. Rather than releasing my hand, though, he kept his grip tight, pulling me along a little faster. So, what are we going to name the baby? Huh, Lil Bloodsucker kinda has a ring to it, don't you think? We'll poll the others on it later. For now, let's keep going. You know, pretty lewd holding hands and all. Sorry, I needed to move in my seat again. It's hard work just sitting down, apparently. Hurrying down the street, we followed the hunters into a wide alley. Was this the ambush point? I didn't catch the scent of Randall's clanmates down the road, so they must have turned off somewhere. Maybe the Mavar took a shortcut, or else the hunters had lost them. When we were halfway down the alley, the human group disappeared around a corner. The next second, Randall stopped dead in his tracks. Fuck. I've got a real bad feeling all of a sudden. He paused, closing his eyes. It seemed like he was visibly straining his senses, as if to smell or hear or detect something in the distance. I can hear something. Shit, Valkii, come here. Without warning, Randall grabbed me by the waist, pulling me into a tiny opening off the alley. Say nothing. Without struggling, I let Randall tug me around the corner. Ooh, a CG. With my character in it. Quiet. His arm squeezed around me, pulling me closely against his chest. A few moments later... Down this way, quick. They followed us, I know it. I saw them come this way. Light footsteps quickly approached us from around the corner, along with hushed voices. I could smell humans, the hunters. They were getting closer. Our hiding spot could barely fit one person, let alone two, but Randall clutched me tightly enough that we managed to squeeze in. He didn't breathe. Yeah, I was going to say. And I heard no heartbeat in his chest, but every muscle in his body felt tense to its limit. Damn it, I know they were just here. Well, where the fuck are they then? On the rooftops? No, they must be hiding. Their footsteps grew closer, slow and cautious. I couldn't tell how many there were, but it sounded like more than two were heading for us. Silently, Randall reached for the back of his belt. He pulled out a knife, the same knife I had returned to him during our first meeting. His fingers grasped my wrist, and he nudged the knife's handle against my palm as if coaxing me to take it. Sure, why not? He was offering me his beloved knife to protect myself. I couldn't just refuse it, so I tucked it inside my own belt. If someone came around the corner, we could lash out together and make an escape. And Randall was a Mavar, so he probably preferred fighting with his fists. Hey! Hey, over here! Right outside our hiding spot, a voice hissed out. Less than 10 feet away, footsteps getting closer. The scent of humans of anger right beside us. Wait! They went down, over here! The garage, quick! As a cry echoed through the alley, time seemed to grind to a standstill. Neither Randall nor I moved a single muscle. I could still sense the hunter beside us, listening, hesitating. Ah, shit. I'm coming. Until finally the footsteps turned, dashing off into the alley. We stayed silent, waiting for them to disappear. There was a distant crash, a metal scraping sound, and then nothing. Damn it. Those dumbasses didn't stick to the plan. Randall let out an abrupt hiss, releasing me from his grip and darting around the corner. I followed him quickly, not wanting to be left behind with hunters prowling around. It sounds like they went into the garage instead, so we're gonna have to go down too. Well, what are you waiting for? Let's go. He nodded, gritting his teeth together. The next moment, Randall turned and bolted for the nearby parking garage. As I followed him closely, I heard the distant sound of shouting and gunfire, echoing somewhere deep inside. 1 level, 2, 3. Their voices grew louder. But by the time we arrived, the fight was already over. Empty shells and bloodstains were scattered on the concrete, forming a picture of what had happened just minutes ago. No one seemed to be seriously hurt, save for a few small injuries that were mending fast. Only one Mavar was slumped against the wall, gunshot wounds opened like potholes in her body. But they seemed to be slowly healing, and judging from her groans, she was still alive. As for the hunters, a few of them lay motionless on the ground, face down. Judging from the shrieking in the distance, the rest had fled or were being chased off. But one hunter was still alive, struggling under the boot of a familiar vampire. Jack, just let me go, please. I'll give it all up, I promise. I'll never come near you again. He panted heavily, his fingers scrabbling against the concrete floor as Jack kept him pinned down. No, he's a lying piece of shit. The wounded Mavar against the wall suddenly screamed out, pointing an accusing finger at the hunter. Every time we fucking play catch and release, they always come back to kill us. Fuck, I've lost friends to these fucking worthless blood bags. I don't care if they're humans, they should all just die. Valkii. Randall suddenly turned to me. The look in his eyes was intensely serious, and yet somehow also strangely detached. You saw what happened and heard what he said. I want you to tell me something. What do you think he deserves? Just let him go. The hunter's eyes flew wide, at once full of relief and lingering terror. Randall seemed to hesitate for a moment, his gaze flicked between me and the hunter, and briefly the injured Mavar. But soon he gave a small nod to Jack, who slowly lifted his boot off the hunter. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I heard some of the Mavar muttering in disapproval, but no one seemed ready to loudly object. Did I just lose? No, everyone still fucking loves me. Now, before you get your pathetic ass far, far away from this city, I want you to tell me something. How the fuck has your group been figuring out our locations? Make sure you tell me the whole truth, or else you're not going to like what I have waiting for you. Yes. The hunter instantly nodded his head, his arms curling protectively about himself. It was the other vampires. They gave us tips about you, the other houses. They kept telling us where to find you, what your routines are, your relationships. Some of them even gave us weapons. As soon as he spoke, shocked murmurs and infuriated growls spread throughout the group. Randall stared at the hunter with a cold, piercing gaze, as if trying to peel back his words to expose any lies. But it seemed like he didn't find any. Yeah. With a sudden growl, Randall venomously kicked a nearby empty bottle, sending it smashing into the wall. He looked completely furious, the angriest I'd ever seen him. Go. Randall muttered a single word to the hunter, who jolted like he'd been struck. Then, hastily nodding, the man dashed forward, eagerly putting distance between him and the snarling Mavar surrounding him. But when he passed by my side, he stopped for a moment to stare wide-eyed at me. Thank you so much. Stammering his words out tearfully, he gazed at me with the most grateful look I'd ever seen. He knew I had held his life in my hands, but I'd given it back. Get the fuck out of here already. Someone kicked their boot into his rear, sending him stumbling forward. He bolted out as fast as he could, and the frantic echoing of his footsteps soon faded into silence. As the restless, agitated group prepared to leave, Randall slowly turned to me. Part of me wishes we'd killed him. Then I never would have had to heard what he had to say. Can't believe the other houses are sending hunters to you. I don't want to believe it either. They'd never admit to it, so it's pointless to even say anything. But normal humans wouldn't be able to track us down so easily. With those last words, Randall left my side to check on the others, making sure no one else in the group was still hurt. Together we all left the garage, funneling back outside. The somber mood finally started to lift a little, with jokes flitting around here and there, but everyone still seemed slightly shaken. I'm gonna check my stats again. Do they like me more now? I'm confused. When we reached the alley, Randall told the others to go on ahead, saying he wanted to speak with me privately for a moment. Before long, it was just the two of us standing on the empty, silent asphalt. Valkii. After hesitating briefly, Randall reached out a hand, placing his bandaged palm on my shoulder with a tight squeeze. I hope you're not too mad at me for asking you to come. I knew things could get rough, and I thought it would be a good experience for you, but maybe it went too far. He offered me a faint, apologetic smile, shaking his head. All the hunters we've dealt with in the past never gave us much of a problem, usually just morons from some half-Christian cult with sawed-off shotguns thinking they're the modern-day Knights Templar. But these guys, if they were really sent by the other houses, then it's just another reason why we have to end this war. This whole situation's only going to end up worse until the infighting stops, so maybe tonight helped toughen you up for the future. I'll be ready to help whenever you need me, Randall. Thanks for that, kid. But I'd rather you just look out for yourself. You're the one still caught in the middle of everything. Randall let his gaze fall to the ground, dragged down by some brooding thought. But soon he heaved a huge sigh, glancing back at me with a smile weakly tugging at his lips. His hand lifted from my shoulder to gently ruffle my hair, and a trace of the usual sparkle returned to his eyes. Well, listen, don't let it get you down too much. None of our guys were lost tonight anyway. And hey, we made a close escape with that hiding place, just like something out of a movie, huh? Can I not offer to give him his... knife back? It was pretty neat, I'll admit. You were a good co-star. Oh, thanks, kid. I'll make sure to mention you in my Oscar speech. He pointed double finger guns at me, clicking his tongue with a cheery wink. Alright, I'm gonna get out of here before any more hunters come, and you should head back somewhere safe too. But I hope I'll catch you soon, Valkii. Real soon. I feel like he doesn't like me being too romantic with him, right? I'll try it. I do too. I can't wait to see you again. Oh, okay. And it's mutual. You're really something else, but whatever you are, I like it. Go on now, and don't talk to any strangers on the way home. He has a nice sense of humor about him. We parted like usual, although a certain weight still hung in the air as I left. As I grabbed a taxi to ride back to the hotel, the tension and energy of the night slowly dissipated, leaving me exhausted. I didn't fully understand how my new body worked, but it seemed to just get drained just like a human's did. Maybe because human blood ran through my veins. Click. I curled up that night with images of Randall in the garage still drifting through my head. And the look in that hunter's eyes. I wondered if I'd made the right choice. He seemed grateful. Like, really grateful. The next night, there was no sign of a message from Charisse. Nothing from Randall either. For once then, I had a completely free night. Still, despite my immortal lifespan, I felt like I probably shouldn't laze around in bed or watch the entire VHS collection of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air that, for some reason, was tucked into my TV cabinet. Instead, something much stronger was tempting me, a meeting with the Golgotha leader. I felt a strange, insistent pull towards him, towards the cemetery. It was like an unseen will tangling with my own. My gut feeling told me I'd be safe. If he really wanted to kill or capture me, I'd already given him plenty of chances. But before I went to meet him, I needed to feed again. Venturing somewhere potentially dangerous without fresh blood seemed like a bad idea. Drink from Alusha. Picking up the phone, I dialed Alusha's number, and sure enough, she answered after a few rings. When I asked her to come over, she happily agreed, and about 10 minutes later. Oh my, someone has a fancy room. I should come and lounge over here more often. I wouldn't mind seeing you more either. Better not say that, or else you'll never be able to get rid of me. Anyway, shall we, darling? Oh, and if you don't mind, could you lay me down to rest a bit afterwards? I'm sure you have things to do, but I'll leave as soon as the wooziness wears off. Taking Alusha into my arms, I leaned down to bite into the soft, rosy, perfumed skin of her neck. Her reaction was noticeably different from David's, more muted and subtle, as if being fed on didn't elicit the same mindless bliss in her. Still, she let a sort of warm sigh, slowly going limp against me as her eyelids fluttered shut. Once I'd had my fill, I set Alusha's mostly unconscious body on my bed like she'd asked. She seemed to be snoring lightly, so I decided to leave her and go about my business. Because Hollyfield Cemetery was a little too far to walk, I hailed a cab and settled down in my seat, gazing out at the distant moon. Living in a graveyard was an interesting choice, even for a vampire. The irony had to be deliberate. It shouldn't have been that strange since we were all dead, clinically speaking, but most vampires didn't seem to flaunt that fact. The entrance to the The entrance to the cemetery almost looked like it belonged to a mansion. I reached out to testingly push the elegant towering iron gates, wondering if they were locked. But they loudly creaked open at the first hint of my touch, all too eager to beckon me inside. With some hesitation, I stepped onto the little path that wound through a maze of graves. It was dark, almost unnaturally dark, and a thin mist curled sluggishly among the headstones. I couldn't deny the cemetery's haunting beauty. The watchful statues, the towering trees, the rigid lamps that cast an eerie sheen on whatever they struck. Everything seemed preserved in time. Far in the distance, I saw the city lights glowing brightly like electric fireflies drifting through the darkness. My eyes fell from glittering skyscrapers down to the cold, grey tombstones surrounding me. The atmosphere of graveyards like this made me feel... whatever. I stood still for a moment, absorbing the otherworldly atmosphere. I could barely put words to the feeling I had, a walking corpse among the resting dead, so distantly removed from the sparkling Hollywood hills. It was almost like I belonged here instead. I loved cemeteries before, but now, this one seemed to call to me. If only I knew how to answer. Following the path, I headed deeper into the graveyard, forcing myself to stay on high alert. Everyone seemed either terrified of this man or reluctant to even speak his name. Considering the power and confidence of most vampires I'd met so far, that was no small feat. But after wandering around for several minutes, I couldn't find anyone. Maybe I'd missed him, or else Zhang had pulled some kind of prank on me. There wasn't exactly a doorbell I could ring either. Suddenly, I sensed the presence of someone nearby. Like Marcus, it had abruptly appeared instead of slowly growing closer. My eyes darted around to try and spot the source, but I couldn't detect where they were. Until I glanced behind the mausoleum. There, a lone statuesque figure stood with his back to me, gazing up at the moon. The instant I saw him, a chill ran down my spine for reasons I couldn't explain. Something about his presence was incredibly calm and controlled, almost too calm. Completely unlike any other human or vampire I'd met. Hello. My voice came out thin and uncertain, nearly carried away by the breeze. But it seemed to reach the man, who slowly turned to face me. His eyes dimly glowed like two beacons in the dark, casting a pale golden sheen onto his face. The figure took a few steps towards me. Maybe the wind drowned them out, but I could have sworn his footsteps in the grass were silent. He stopped a small distance away, gazing me up and down with aloof curiosity. At last, with a soft inhale, he subtly nodded, maybe to himself more than to me. "Welcome to my residence, Valkii. I hope its unorthodox nature does not cause you undue distress." He spoke in a near-quiet monotone, his deep voice oddly soothing. "I am Andre Zabek." "Andre, you the Golgotha leader?" The corners of his mouth curled faintly upwards at my reply, yet it didn't seem quite like a smile. "It appears my message was delivered. I am pleased you decided to acknowledge it. Only on rare occasions do I extend personal greetings to Los Angeles' latest inductions, but for you, I chose to make an exception." "And why might that be?" The glow of Andre's eyes flickered for less than a second, like a lamp brushed by a poltergeist. "There are on occasion individuals of unique potential and circumstances who are noteworthy enough to attract my interest. Very few vampires have been turned in Los Angeles the past several years, and have managed to survive. Yet you appear to flourish, and nascent as you are in your development, I feel as if you hold great promise." "It's a cold, isolated existence, but it's also exciting. I like it. It is all of those things and far, far more. It is Hollywood." Something made his strangely simple answer stick in my mind. "I am aware of your employ by Charisse Locke, the Ascari leader and regent of Los Angeles. Her methodology of ruling is disagreeable to me. That is why I seek to subvert it and why I rally others against her. But she is a formidable opponent. While the Mavar seek to fight in the streets, Locke and I battle in the shadows, a duel of assassins and spies." A faint, insidious smile spread across his lips, not quite reaching his eyes. "However, as of late, she has begun losing ground to me. I believe that is why, in her desperation, she seeks to mold you into a suitable weapon." "I'm just doing what I have to. My situation isn't exactly flexible. There is nothing one is forced to do, save for abiding by the natural laws of the universe. Beyond those laws, your will is entirely your own. You are merely deceiving yourself into seeing another's will as an impassable barrier, when in reality it is nothing but a circle of thread on the floor around you. Such a barrier exists solely because you believe it does." His quiet, calm voice drifting into silence, Andre turned his gaze up towards the moon. "The time for an end to this conflict swiftly approaches, Valkii. Either a new ruler will establish domain over the Los Angeles Coven, or else we shall descend into anarchy, the beginning of an inevitable end for our kind." He sounded remarkably placid for such a dramatic statement. Even when I studied his face, I couldn't see any visible traces of emotion. My assistants serve as my eyes and ears, unseen and unheard, absorbing all that would be hidden as they move among the dead. But with the current tension between the houses, their range is limited. Andre fell purposefully silent, allowing his thin smile to finish his implication. "Well, maybe I could help with that. Such an agreement may be of mutual benefit to us, I believe. Unlike your arrangement with the Ascari, in my employ you will be treated fairly and with due respect. Join me and I can promise you an elevated seat in the new government I intend to establish." "All right, I'm interested in working together." "I'm not." "Excellent, I am pleased to hear your decision. You may be relieved to hear that I require little of you at this stage. Infrequent reports should suffice. However, I ask that you continue to endure Locke's requests for a short while longer. Your ambiguous affiliation will serve as a pass around Los Angeles with little risk of harm, for now that is. When the time comes to break from her, it will be apparent." "You're right, I'll deal with her until then. I truly sympathize with your plight, young Mavar. We have all been forced to endure unsavory situations for the sake of future progress, as the gears of advancement are only turned through suffering." He inclined his head serenely, though his eyes never shifted from my face. Before I should forget, I advise you against mentioning this meeting to Randall. If he knew of our affiliation, it would doubtlessly upset him, for indeed he is very afraid of me." "Duly noted. I'll keep quiet. Thank you." For a moment, I thought I saw something strange in Andre's eyes, but it quickly vanished. "I believe that concludes our business for tonight, as I must attend to several arrangements. However, please visit me again at your earliest convenience. There is a great deal more for us to discuss." Okay. See ya. After Andre's polite dismissal, I left the mausoleum behind, heading back down the empty path. All the way back to the graveyard's entrance, I couldn't shake the strange feeling of presences surrounding me, but they were too muddled to really identify. Luckily, I managed to pass a passing taxi not far from the cemetery. By the time we drove back into Hollywood, sunrise was still several hours away. Something about the graveyard had left me feeling restless, so I decided to pay a visit somewhere. Alright, where are we paying a visit? And actually, I will pay a visit in the next one. Boy!